Whips and Chains, a Billionaire Romance Audiobook by Michelle Love and Celeste Fall. Chapter 1. Not in My Backyard.
31-year-old Tracie Spellman pushed her artfully streaked blonde hair out of her eyes, blindly swatting at the snooze button on the alarm that refused to let her sleep. Her head pounded. Every muscle complained. Even blinking felt like a chore. With a groan, she rolled over. That's when she noticed the rumpled sheets, stained in a way that made her freeze, and a lingering, uncomfortable stickiness between her thighs. What the hell happened last night? While she was trying to collect her senses and her recollections, a sharp knock sounded at the door. Tracie squinted at the clock. Her head pounded. 8:04. Geez. Who'd be bothering her at this hour? The door opened, and in whisked her secretary, Avril Steele. Her Prada shoes clicked purposefully on the shiny oak floor as she bustled briskly across the spacious room to Tracie's bedside. She fixed her steely gray eyes on Tracie's disheveled appearance and sniffed in disdain. Tracie was pretty sure her prim British assistant could sense the romance still clinging to her skin. "What do you want, Avril?" Tracie groaned. She knew her assistant's presence at this hour couldn't be a good sign. "Madame," Avril began, glancing pointedly at her watch, "when Master Jamie left for work over an hour ago, he asked me to wake you and remind you of your meeting with Mrs. Chambers at 9. "Oh no. Is that today?" The pounding in her head increased to jackhammer intensity. "Well, this is July 8th, so yes, the meeting is today," Avril replied patiently as if she were talking to a 3-year-old. Tracie hated Avril's condescending attitude. The efficient yet irritating 40-year-old had not been Tracie's choice. She hadn't wanted an assistant at all. But if she was forced to hire one, she wanted someone who was younger and more fun. But Jamie, as always, had the last word. He insisted that his attractive wife needed someone who would keep her on track and establish a routine in Tracie's life. In other words, someone to whom Tracie would be accountable when Jamie was at work. When Tracie and Jamie met at college and fell in love, the poor girl from the wrong side of the tracks in her small southern Alabama town of Skunk's Hollow had no idea how wide a gap separated their lives. Tracie was in for her first rude awakening when Jamie brought her home to his massive Montgomery estate. Her mind traveled back while Avril strode to her closet to select an appropriate outfit for her meeting. With a quiet groan, Tracie gathered the soiled sheets around her and headed for the shower. She had no energy for sparring with meddlesome Lottie Chambers today. Why does Jamie get her involved in these touchy issues, she wondered. Or is this the work of his mother? When she'd met the intimidating Marilyn Spellman, it had been hate at first sight. The dark-haired, statuesque matriarch had left nothing to the imagination. She loathed Tracie's mere existence. And as for this little gold digger, has it ever been part of my family? Never. Charity might begin at home, but not in my son's bedroom, according to Marilyn. All efforts on Jamie's part to negotiate a truce between the two women he loved most fell on unresponsive ears. Marilyn Spellman might be the undisputed champion of fundraisers for local food banks and homeless shelters. But when it came to her family, she didn't care a bit about how Tracie had pulled herself out of the slums and graduated at the top of her class at Emory. She would never be welcome under Marilyn's roof. All Jamie's eloquent pleading to his mother to put herself in Tracie's shoes had no effect on Marilyn. Her mind was made up. This girl was bad news, and the sooner Jamie came to his senses and dumped her, the better. To be fair, Tracie admitted, she and Jamie's mother did not get off on the right foot when Marilyn burst into Jamie's bedroom and found Tracie on her knees in front of Jamie, performing fellatio. 2 nights in widely separated bedrooms had taken their toll on the pair accustomed to sleeping together at Emory. They were merely getting reacquainted and letting off some pent-up physical steam. Marilyn didn't see it that way. She was convinced Tracie was a low-life, promiscuous woman who would fall upon whatever was put in front of her. The Spellman wealth was not going to become this girl's opportunity, if Marilyn had anything to say about it. She had pretty socialite Tiffany King in her sights, as soon as she could make her son see things sensibly. Tiffany would be a fine match. She was their kind of people. So the two women gave each other a wide berth. Jamie never took Tracie home again, until she was wearing his grandmother's diamond engagement ring. There was nothing Marilyn Spellman could do except pitch a fit. The 3-carat diamond belonged to Jamie's paternal grandmother, Audra Spellman, who adored Tracie and was thrilled to pass on the family heirloom to her only grandson and his bride-to-be. Marilyn did a slow burn, and waited for the right moment to rid the family of this white trash. Audra also insisted on hosting and paying for the wedding. Tracie was torn. She hadn't been home or talked to her parents since she graduated from high school. She wanted them to know she was doing well, but she didn't want to rub their noses in her success. Although they could make the trip to Audra's mansion in Montgomery, it was unlikely that they'd even consider it. They wouldn't know how to dress, how to act, or how to talk to these people. Meeting her parents would give Marilyn Spellman further fuel to highlight the gap between Jamie and Tracie. The Spellmans and the Rutherfords were as different as two sides of a coin, as sharply contrasting as black and white, as likely to hit it off as fire and gas. It was a disaster waiting to happen. Tracie had worked so hard to rid herself of the stench of Skunk's Hollow. She was reluctant to bring the two disparate sides of her life together. She'd moved on and worked hard to make a new life for herself.
Chapter 2. Avril's Dilemma.
As she gathered the ripped, soiled sheet around her and headed to the bathroom, Tracie could hear Avril's muttering in the cavernous walk-in closet where she was selecting the least inappropriate outfit for Tracie to wear to this important meeting with Lottie Chambers. She paused for a moment, wondering if she should shoo Avril out of her closet. Then, with a shrug and an evil little smile, she continued on her way to the bathroom. "Let the old bat think whatever she wants," Tracie muttered. Avril saw her job as a daily battle of wills to try to mold the reluctant Tracie into the family representative. Marilyn and Alan Spellman would have wanted for their son and her to be part of Spellman Investments. She'd been at it ever since Tracie had become Jamie's bride at age 28. But so far, it was a losing battle. The Spellmans had offered Avril handsome financial incentives for whipping their daughter-in-law into shape. In a battle of wills, Avril was usually up for the challenge. But it seemed that she'd met her match. Tracie wasn't like the other pampered, spoiled little rich girls whom Avril had been sent to dispatch after Master Jamie had awakened to find the inconvenient conquest resting her head on his shoulder. Tracie was a tough nut with street smarts. Clearly, she had no notion of being spirited away by the intimidating Avril. This girl had substance. Avril was grudgingly appreciative of her backbone, if not her manners or her deplorable taste in clothing. True, the Spellmans had won a battle when Avril was chosen as the new Mrs. Spellman's secretary. There was no doubt that she'd never have been Tracie's choice. Avril knew she wasn't young enough, hip enough, or fun enough to suit Tracie. The young blonde acted like a teenager. She had no idea what her role should be, nor did she seem to care. And as for Master Jamie? He was so smitten, Avril thought to herself, that he couldn't see how his wife's attitude was hurting his reputation and that of the company. Spellman Financial could not afford a false step. Avril had heard Jamie and his father discussing some bad investments, and their need to woo new clients and offer incentives to their present clients to stay. She knew that if the company hoped to stay afloat, the Spellmans had to do some fancy manipulating. Frankly, Avril did not see the new Mrs. Spellman as an asset in that department. However, Avril knew how important it was for Tracie to make a good impression on Lottie Chambers. Tracie seemed unaware or unconcerned about how much was riding on this meeting. Avril shook her head in dismay as she scrutinized Tracie's wardrobe. Nothing here spoke of business and good breeding. At best, the clothes were frivolous. At worst, they were simply poorly designed and had bad fashion sense. As she worked her way down the rows of clothing arranged in no particular order, Avril made a note to return to the closet and establish some order with the maid, who picked up after Tracie dropped her clothes anywhere. She had just about come to the end of the massive closet when her hand hit a leather garment in the dark corner. When she pulled it off the rod, she gasped in horror. Hanging from a padded hanger was a black leather bustier. In a box below it, she discovered thigh-high black leather boots and a whip with braided lashes that ended in metal studs. What appeared to be blood coated several of the studs. Avril pulled back her hand as if she'd been burned. What on earth is this girl playing at? Unable to resist, Avril plunged her hand farther into the box. The next item she pulled out was a set of fur-lined handcuffs. There were a handful of silk scarves in various stages of wrinkle and knot. Out came a giant purple feather. Then, in the very bottom of the box, Avril extracted a pair of shiny black leather gloves. Examining them closely, she noted a greasy substance which looked suspiciously like Vaseline, coated the palms and fingers. Avril shuddered and swallowed deep breaths to keep from being sick. What on earth were these two up to, she wondered. She recalled the blood-stained sheet, which appeared to have slits cut into its Egyptian cotton threads. Images rose unbidden to her troubled mind. Should I report this to the Spellmans? Should I mention it to Master Jamie? Was he part of this, or were the things I found part of Tracie's sordid past? Avril decided to do nothing until she knew more about what was going on. This might have been a costume for a masquerade. Rich people had strange diversions. She quickly snapped photos of the garments and the other paraphernalia with her phone. Then, with a sigh, she chose the least objectionable of Tracie's outfits and left it on a chair by the bathroom door.
Chapter 3. Untouched.
Hot water flowed over Tracie's aching body. With a soft washcloth, she probed the depths of her core, wincing as her sweet spot proved to be anything else but sweet. As she lathered her body and hair with the rich lavender products she liked, she tried to recreate the events of the night before. She recalled a loud party and far too much champagne. She remembered someone, it might have been Jamie, feeding her toast points piled high with beluga caviar. She knew she'd washed it down with the finest vodka money could buy. She had no idea how she'd gotten to bed or who had undressed her. Where are my clothes? Did I hang them up? She had a foggy idea of whips and chains and 4-inch high heels on hip-high boots with spurs. Did I dream all of this? If it was just a hazy memory, then why were the sheets marked? Sure, her body ached in places she hadn't expected, but not enough to explain that. So who had left those stains? With a contented smile, Tracie recalled her first meeting with Jamie. She was majoring in political science, and Jamie was getting a business degree. Their programs both required introductory economics and statistics. Tracie noticed the handsome auburn-haired hunk with the surfer's body. He glanced at her, his startling green eyes sweeping over her. After their first economics seminar, he'd introduced himself and invited her for coffee. They talked about everything: new movies, music they enjoyed, books they'd read. They laughed over their classmates' bizarre behavior. Jamie had her in stitches when he mimicked their professors. When Jamie walked her back to her dorm, he'd leaned in and placed a butterfly-like kiss on her forehead. "See you tomorrow, Tracie Rutherford," he'd called back over his shoulder. The next day, he'd called to ask her to work on a statistics assignment together. Tracie was so smitten with the gorgeous popular boy with the killer smile that she could scarcely wait to get to class each day. There followed a whirlwind romance. In the city no longer than she had been, Jamie seemed to know the in-places. They ate in some amazing Atlanta restaurants and attended sporting events, concerts, and theater. They went for long drives in the BMW coupe his parents had given him for graduation, sharing kisses that fogged the windows of the baby blue car. "Your first time is going to be unforgettable," Jamie whispered one night, both of them breathless and blushing from the closeness. "How did you know?" Tracie asked, mortified. "Is it really that obvious I have no idea what I'm doing?" Jamie laughed softly and kissed her forehead. "You're perfect. Every time you kiss me, I almost lose my mind. Trust me, there's nothing inexperienced about you." "What gave me away then?" she grumbled. He hesitated, then grinned. Just the way you react when I'm near you. It's very flattering. She swatted his arm but smiled, cheeks warm. Jamie kept his promise about making the night special. Dinner at a candlelit steakhouse in Atlanta, complete with roses at the table, and a violinist weaving love songs around them. Champagne made Tracie giggly and light as air. Afterward, they strolled down the street to a luxurious hotel where Jamie had reserved the bridal suite. There were chocolate-covered strawberries and a heart-shaped tub full of bubbles waiting for them. They soaked, laughed, fed each other strawberries, and whispered secrets that had never felt safe to share before. Later, behind the privacy of a closed door, Jamie was gentle and patient, never rushing a thing. He held her like she was something precious. When they finally came together, it was new and overwhelming and wonderful, more than she had dared to hope for. They fell asleep tangled together, and when Tracie woke the next morning, the glow on her skin and the smile on her lips told the whole story. Jamie had breakfast waiting, and he kissed her hair as she sat beside him in a fluffy white hotel robe. "What should we do today?" he asked. "Don't you have class?" she teased. "I'm officially at your disposal." "In that case," she said, eyes sparkling as she reached for his hand, "I know exactly how I want to spend the day." Jamie grinned, already understanding. "Good thing I have plenty of energy." She leaned in close. "Very good thing."
Chapter 4. Whatever It Takes.
When people talked about being swept off their feet and love at first sight, practical Tracie Rutherford scoffed outright. For her, there was no poetry and candlelight and violin music. She devoted her entire miserable life to escaping the abject poverty of her situation. Her life had been one struggle after another. The fifth child of 7, she saw what it meant to wear hand-me-downs that had been patched over patches. She knew what it felt like to endure hunger pangs because fried bread was all that was available for breakfast, and her lunch consisted of apples from the tree behind their 3-bedroom cabin and leftover breakfast bread, if such a thing existed. Her parents worked from dawn to dusk to scrabble crops from the poor sandy soil that surrounded their house. By the time they paid the rent on the property, there was precious little to buy flour, sugar, and seeds for the next crop. As a child, Tracie didn't feel resentful. None of the other kids in the one-room school the Rutherford kids attended had anything either. But Tracie had one thing the others did not have. The strikingly beautiful little girl had a burning desire to escape the poverty in which she'd grown up. As she watched her older sisters and brothers marry and sink into the same hopeless existence her parents lived, she vowed that she'd make something of herself. She'd get out of Skunk's Hollow and never look back. Besides being beautiful, Tracie Rutherford had smarts. She was book smart and she was street smart. She avoided the boys of Skunk's Hollow and the surrounding communities like the plague. Though they sniffed around her like dogs in heat, Tracie was not about to jeopardize her escape plan by lying with any of them. Intimacy with those boys could end in only one thing: a life of hard work, starvation, and popping out a kid every year until mercifully menopause took care of that, or her reproductive system just collapsed. She'd seen what happened to her mother and the other neighbor ladies, dull-eyed, toothless creatures who looked 20 years older than their actual age. Tracie was not about to fall into that trap. So Tracie developed a reputation for being uppity, a tease, someone who thought she was better than everybody else. This only intensified the male interest in getting into her pants. Tracie's high school years at nearby Alabaster High were marked by scuffles in the stairwells, where her classmates tried to grope her, and skirmishes behind closed classroom doors, where the randy PE teacher attempted to cop a feel under the guise of helping her explore her sexuality. Exhausted by fending off these unwanted advances, Tracie sought the help of her guidance counselor, a world-weary 60-year-old named Amanda Ames. Her meeting with Miss Ames was the luckiest thing that happened to the 16-year-old. It was no accident that the red-haired, green-eyed woman had chosen guidance. A product of the dirt farm existence in Lower Alabama, Amanda Ames had used her academic ability to escape the cycle of misery she saw in her community. She had endured cruel comments, unwanted attention, and rough treatment from her family and neighbors, until a caring high school guidance teacher stepped into her life. Lydia Percy took Amanda under her wing. She helped her apply for scholarships and assisted her with settling in at Emory, where she got a teaching degree. Although Amanda had vowed never to return to Southern Alabama, when the guidance position came up at Alabaster, Amanda took it as a sign that she should pay it forward. To that end, she had been helping people like Tracie escape their past for 30 years now. When Tracie secured a full scholarship to the University of Georgia, just outside Atlanta, she was the happiest girl in the world. She loved the fact that this flagship college, touting itself as the birthplace of higher education, was not in a big city. She vowed she'd make Miss Ames proud of her. With money given to her by the guidance staff, she bought a one-way bus ticket to Athens, Georgia. Tracie, who'd hardly ever been outside Alabaster and Skunk's Hollow, fell immediately in love with this university town an hour northeast of Atlanta. With a population of over 100,000, this sixth-largest Georgia city had the feel of a large town. The University of Georgia was literally a town within a town. Tracie also liked the sense of history of the campus. Its first buildings had actually been made from logs. Lots around the campus were sold in the early 1800s to raise money to build more university buildings. When the first class graduated in 1804, the town of Athens had only 3 homes, 3 stores, and a few other buildings on Front Street. This street was later renamed Broad Street. Franklin College, completed in 1806, was the University of Georgia's first permanent structure. This brick building, named in honor of Ben Franklin, was still standing and called Old College. As she walked through the campus grounds, Tracie felt like she belonged here, that she was a part of an American heritage. She silently blessed Miss Ames for giving her this opportunity. And she made a pledge that she would do her best to make this precious gift pay off. Tracie studied campus maps eagerly, familiarizing herself with the bookstore, her dorm building, and the buildings where her classes would be held. She took the self-guided campus tour, made a trip to the UGA Visitors Center, and checked the UGA master calendar to see what events were happening on campus each day. She was grateful that Miss Ames had suggested she arrive a week earlier than registration, so she had a feel for her surroundings before the crowd started to descend. When the first day of classes rolled around, Tracie was armed with textbooks, a tablet, and UGA sweatshirts. As she headed across campus with her UGA backpack slung over her shoulder, she felt like a college student. "Let the adventure begin," she cried, throwing her arms into the sultry southern subtropical air. She had no idea what adventures awaited her.
Chapter 5. Cocktails at 8.
Somehow, it had never occurred to Tracie that Jamie's family was wealthy. Sure, they'd bought him a car for graduation. He had money for fine dining, concerts, and sporting events. But he'd explained that his summers were spent working at his dad's company, and that's why he had more disposable income than his friends. Otherwise, Jamie dressed and acted like all the other guys at college. She donned the boring outfit Avril had left for her to wear to her meeting with Lottie Chambers, and finished the last touches on her makeup. In preparation for this important outing, Tracie recalled her first meeting with Jamie's parents. When he pulled up in the driveway of what Tracie could only call a mansion, a valet opened the door of Jamie's blue sports car. There were at least a dozen high-end luxury cars and limousines parked in the huge circular stone driveway. Tracie's heart dropped. So much for a low-key dinner with his parents, she thought in dismay. What have I gotten myself into? In an instant, Tracie understood why Jamie had taken her shopping for a cocktail dress and matching shoes. "We can slip in this door and get change first," Jamie announced. Speechless, Tracie followed him. "Don't worry," Jamie said, straightening his tie. "They'll love you." As they descended the stairs, a statuesque brunette broke away from the group and eyed Tracie's figure-clinging iridescent blue gown with a steely gaze. "You must be Tracie," she said, extending a claw-like manicured hand. "I'm Marilyn Spellman." Without missing a beat, she kissed her son and said, "Jamie, get the girl a drink and introduce her to our friends." Then she was gone. "You must be the little trollop that's got Marilyn's knickers in a knot," boomed a loud, raspy voice. I'm Lottie Chambers, and I am amused to meet you. Anyone who causes Marilyn's panties to bunch is an instant friend of mine." Tracie watched as the large woman, clad in purple suede and matching hand-tooled cowboy boots, grasped Jamie in a bear hug. "Sugar, you've been away from us far too long," she crooned. "Lottie, you look marvelous," said Jamie. "Are those new boots?" he asked, inspecting Lottie's silver-heeled leather boots with the silver spurs and toe caps. Lottie did a little boot-scooting boogie, admiring her footwear as she did so. "Finest boots made in New Mexico," she confirmed. "That's where all the rich Texans go." Lottie is surprisingly light on her feet, for such a substantial woman who'd never see 70 again, Tracie thought. But what a strange guest to have been included on the Spellman's cocktail party guest list. She knew there was an interesting story there. She'd ask Jamie later. Who was she to judge others? An elegant woman in a couture gown and dazzling jewelry approached. "Now, Lottie," she chided, "don't be monopolizing the attention of my favorite grandson." "Hello, sweet thing," she said, kissing Jamie. "I'm your only grandson, Grandma," Jamie said, giving the woman a hug. "Tracie, please say hello to my grandmother, Audra Spellman." "Pleased to meet you, Mrs. Spellman," Tracie said, curtsying. "Oh, Jamie," Audra said, "she's a delight." Turning her attention to Tracie, she said, "Call me Audra, dear." "Your dress is stunning, Mrs. Audra," murmured Tracie. "And Lottie's boots?" asked Audra with a twinkle in her eye. "What do you think of them?" "They are truly astounding," Tracie remarked. With a delighted laugh, Audra slapped her grandson on the back. "She'll do just fine, son," Audra pronounced. "Just don't let your mother destroy her." Audra's caution had been accurate. It was hate at first sight, Tracie remembered. There was nothing she could do to please Marilyn Spellman. She wasn't from the right family. She didn't come from money, and she didn't speak correctly, dress appropriately, or even play the right games. Tracie had the distinct impression that Marilyn Spellman had Jamie's bride all lined up, and that Tracie's presence was inconvenient and unfortunate. Tracie surveyed herself in the mirror. When did I become a Marilyn Spellman clone? She wondered as she examined her perfect hair, styled at Marilyn's salon, and her prim business suit, created by Marilyn's favorite designer. Even her purse and shoes came from Marilyn's favorite shop. In trying to please my husband, have I sold my soul? She mused. She took a quick look at the rose tattoo that peeked timidly from her bra. When she'd admired Jamie's tattooed chest and buttocks, he insisted she needed to consider body art too. She was squeamish about pain, but she'd agreed to get one just to please Jamie. What else am I going to have to do to keep my handsome husband? She thought. She was soon to have an answer to that question.
Chapter 6. Easy Rider.
A loud roaring noise, like a jet landing, brought Tracie from the back of the house where she was gardening. In their driveway, a huge motorcycle idled with a leather-clad person astride. When the visor of the helmet flipped up, she realized it was Jamie. He looked lethal, cradling that machine between his legs. "Hop on," he invited with a flourish. "Are you kidding?" she asked. "I'm in my gardening clothes. I can't go for a ride looking like this," she said, eyeing her short ripped denim shorts and her skimpy bikini top. "I'd be the envy of the neighborhood if you did," he said, wiggling his eyebrows. "I was sort of hoping you'd break out that leather bustier and those thigh-high boots for your first ride on your new machine." "My machine?" Tracie asked. "Well, I figured if you ever got tired of the machine between my legs, there'd be another one to take its place. I'll go and change into something sensible for risking my life on the open road," Tracie commented dryly. "Whose bike is this anyhow?" "It's yours," he replied. "If you like it, we'll get a pair of them and tour the country." "This isn't just a bike," he added. "It's a Yamaha Star Venture touring bike. It comes with an all-new hybrid steel frame with an aluminum subframe. The 113 cubic foot air-cooled V-twin engine is tuned with twin counterbalancers. It's engineered to provide a smooth, comfortable ride on any road surface." When Tracie rolled her eyes, Jamie laughed and said, "Okay. It's a guy thing. I was just going to say it's a killer red, and I love the backrest behind the second rider. So, are you ready? Jamie asked. Okay, Tracie said, taking a deep breath. But don't get your heart set on twin bikes. I think I'd like to tour the country from the safety of the back seat, clutching you for dear life. You are such a sweet talker, Jamie said, hugging her. Now let's go, he said, giving her behind a playful smack. Daylight is wasting. How do I look? She asked. Not nearly as enticing as you would wearing that bustier. But a lot safer. I guess. Ready for the open road? Jamie asked when Tracie had reappeared wearing jeans, boots, and a leather jacket. Jamie swung onto the bike with effortless confidence, like he'd been born in a leather jacket. Tracie followed a little more carefully, then scooted forward until she was pressed snugly against him, her arms circling his waist. I'm starting to understand the hype, she said through the helmet mic, giving a playful little wiggle as she settled in. The way she held him made it impossible for him to ignore just how much he enjoyed having her there, close and trusting. With a flourish of dust and stones, they were off. The bike did indeed ride smoother than Tracie had expected. Before long, they had entered the freeway, and Jamie opened up the throttle. Over his shoulder, Tracie could see that they were going nearly 100 miles an hour. If you ever hope to get me back onto this bike, you'll slow down, she warned. Where's the fun in that? Jamie asked. They were whistling by cars and trucks so fast the vehicles seemed to blur. Tracie got to experience the Doppler effect up close. Tracie felt like nothing lay between her and the road. It was at the same time a frightening and exhilarating feeling. After an hour, Jamie pulled the bike onto a scenic overlook. The road seemed to drop away into a deep gully. At the bottom, sheep and cattle grazed, oblivious to the traffic above them. Jamie put the bike on its kickstand, and together they raced to the shade of a live oak tree. I have to admit, Tracie said with a breathless laugh, this ride is definitely doing something to me. Oh, really? Jamie teased, his grin wicked beneath his helmet. Well, we can't have you distracted. Safety first, right? When they finally stopped, the rush of wind still buzzing through their veins, they tugged off helmets and gloves and met each other halfway, mouths hungry, hands already in motion. The ride had sparked something hot and urgent between them, and now there was no holding back. They shed layers in a hurried blur, too caught up in each other to care where anything landed. The world seemed to tilt as they came together, fast, breathless, electrified by the adrenaline still roaring in their bodies. Nothing gentle. Nothing measured. Just two people fueled by the thrill of speed and the need to feel every inch of the moment. Spent, they talked about Jamie's motorcycle dreams. I've always wanted to travel the $1 million highway, he admitted. Why do they call it that? Tracie asked. Is it because it cost $1 million? Closer than you think, Jamie agreed. The stretch of road got its name from the high cost of construction. Builders had to literally cut the road through the treacherous Red Mountain Pass between Ouray and Silverton. The time to complete it was significant. Is that the only reason? Tracie asked. Well, another story goes that $1 million highway comes from the gold and silver deposits that still lie buried beneath the highway, Jamie added. So, if we decided to do this trip, where would we start? Jamie pulled out his phone and located a map showing the route. One of my buddies did this last year, he told Tracie. They both bent over the phone. He started at Durango first thing in the morning, just as the sun was rising. He aimed his BMW R1100 RT north toward Silverton. Since he'd been riding over a lot of flat land to get there, he had to shift his thinking from flat, straight desert and prairie roads as he crossed into Colorado. He was now on an extremely twisty mountain road. He said it was easy to get distracted by the beautiful alpine scenery. That sounds nice, Tracie said. I could get used to steep, winding roads, she crooned, blowing in Jamie's ear. It's 50 miles to Silverton. But we'll take time to pull over and take some photos, relax, enjoy the view, and smell the wildflowers. Sure, Tracie murmured. Enjoy the wildflowers and the out-of-the-way places to rest. Right, said Jamie, momentarily distracted. With an effort, he returned to the route. Silverton is really isolated, he said. It sits in a glacial valley surrounded by 13,000-foot-high mountains. The town has only 500 residents. It's 9,200 feet above sea level. Winters are rough. They get at least 300 inches of snow. Summer is high tourist season, and the roads are busy. Tracie was only half listening as she played with Jamie's belt buckle. Your first sight of Silverton is from a crest high above it. You descend to the valley floor and drive down a wide main street. It's just like the set of the old TV show Northern Exposure, he noted, showing her a picture. Tracie looked at the photo, but continued to run her fingers up and down Jamie's arm. She smiled seductively when she noticed a bulge tenting his leather pants. When we're there, Jamie continued, we can have breakfast in the Grand Hotel. That sounds grand, murmured Tracie. Will they have rooms to rent at the Grand Hotel? She asked. If they don't, we'll improvise, Jamie promised. Can you show me how to improvise now? She asked. Lucky for you, I am up to the task, whispered Jamie, taking her clothes off.
Chapter 7. Problems in Paradise.
Right on time, Lottie commented as she waved Tracie over to her table. Lottie had chosen to meet at the Capitol Grill, inside the Capitol building on Paces Ferry Road. The attractive restaurant was full of businessmen having lunch. Clearly, Lottie was a regular, judging by the location of her table and the fact that staff and clientele stopped to greet her. I hope you don't mind my choosing the restaurant, Lottie said. I hate eating dishes I can't even pronounce, from menus I can't even read. It will be nice to dine on dishes I recognize, agreed Tracie. Jamie takes me to places where I have to guess at what he has ordered for me. Herb and I used to eat here when we were in the area, Lottie commented. I miss discussing ranch problems with him. Did your husband run the ranch before he passed away? Tracie asked. Not hardly, Lottie replied. Herb was a rodeo star. His prize money bought the land, but Herb had no head for business, and no interest in running an operation that was several thousand acres of prime ranch land. He liked to come home to the ranch between shows. He loved to show off the place to his rodeo friends. But beyond that, he left the day-to-day running of the place to me and a bunch of ranch hands. So, is it a cattle ranch, Mrs. Chambers? Asked Tracie. Please call me Lottie, the big woman said, tossing back her bourbon and branch and signaling the waiter to bring two. We have several hundred head of Hereford cattle. But the big moneymaker is the quarter-horse breeding business. Do you ride, Tracie? Well, Mrs. Lottie, I never have, but I'd love to learn. Then you come on out to the ranch. Quarter horses are the nicest little mounts. They're smart and they're hard workers. Like a good hunting dog, they aim to please. Sounds like a great combination, Lottie, Tracie said, raising her drink and taking a generous mouthful. She sputtered and coughed. Pace yourself, girl, Lottie cautioned, giving her a healthy slap on the back. That's Kentucky bourbon. It's meant to be sipped. What say we order and then we can talk, she suggested, straightening her jacket. She raised a finger, and a young handsome waiter appeared. Two of the usual, Miss Lottie? He asked. Tracie stared at Lottie's outfit. This one was red suede. Lavish silver embroidery decorated the sleeves, lapels, and yoke. Rhinestones sparkled up and down the cuffs. Hand-tooled red leather boots and a matching red Stetson completed her ensemble. You look wonderful as always, Tracie commented. I don't go in for girly outfits, Lottie commented. Herb and I were cowboys with glitz. It was part of his rodeo personality, and I always felt more comfortable in cowboy attire. I know there has been all sorts of buzz about Audra and me being a couple. And we are, a couple of old broads having adventures and a few laughs together. If that makes people gossip, then so be it. We've got the money and the good health to do as we please. I know our friendship drives Marilyn to distraction. She has pointed out to her mother-in-law on several occasions what the rumor mills are saying. Pay Marilyn no mind. She's got a reindeer up her butt. Well, I'm not at the top of her popularity list either, Tracie admitted, taking a careful sip of her drink. She has condemned me to the ministrations of Avril Steele. I'm sure they both think there's no hope for me. She dressed you today, didn't she? Lottie said, eyeing Tracie's prim navy suit and matching pumps. Do I look like a school marm or a nun? Tracie asked. Pretty much, said Lottie. Let me guess. They wanted you to look proper when representing the business with an important client? That's exactly what I was told, Tracie agreed, laughing. Well, tell them the men all ogled your schoolgirl costume. I think I'll just save that information to share with Jamie. You do that. That precious boy could use a laugh or two. His parents are too intense, and they expect so much of him. He walks a narrow tightrope trying to keep them and the clients happy. And that brings us to the reason for my asking you to lunch. Lottie took a stiff drink and continued. Audra and I have been talking. She can't be seen as airing family laundry, but I can. We think you need a heads up. We both like you and think you're good for our boy. We're shocked that he's had the good sense to choose a quality girl after the bimbos he's dated. So we don't want Marilyn to scare you off. And she will try. You see, Marilyn has Jamie's wife all picked out. She has the right look. She's been to the right schools. Her parents have money, and she has the proper background. Marilyn has merely been waiting for Jamie to sow his wild oats so she can get on with the marriage. Oh, breathed Tracie. She's not Jamie's choice. Remember that. Your paths will cross, and we want you to be prepared. Thank you, Tracie whispered, taking another sip of her bourbon. And there's another thing, Lottie continued. Spellman Financial is not on solid ground as an investment business. Alan is not the astute investor his father was. He has made some bad deals. Audra and I are keeping a keen eye on things. Spellman will go to any lengths to save the business and uphold its reputation. Don't let them throw you to the wolves. I'll keep that in mind, Tracie stammered. Just remember, Lottie said, cutting up the final morsel of her rib eye and popping it into her mouth, Audra and I have your back. If anything does not seem quite right, you tell us. And let's make plans for you to come out to the ranch and go riding real soon. With a wave, Lottie crawled into her classic Cadillac convertible and was on her way. She's larger than life and a good person to have your back, Tracie said to herself as her car pulled up.
Chapter 8. Whips and Riding Boots.
Tracie stepped out of the bathroom, shoulders back, confidence borrowed from the glossy boots that reached her thighs. Moonlight traced the sleek lines of her outfit, and for a heartbeat, she wondered if she looked as bold as she felt. Is this really what you want, Jamie? She asked, lifting a prop she'd picked out just for tonight, playful, harmless, and dramatic. Jamie nodded eagerly, eyes wide with anticipation. He tugged at the padded restraints, securing his wrists and ankles to the bed frame. His idea, not hers, and she still couldn't believe she'd agreed to this. His tattoo flexed with every breath, as if it had a mind of its own. I've been terrible, he said with theatrical misery. You should absolutely take me in hand. Since Jamie had confessed his dream of switching roles in the bedroom, Tracie had buried herself in research. He was far more experienced, and his imagination was bolder than hers. Last night had been her turn. Slow kisses, laughter, dessert in unexpected places, and long hours wrapped together until the sun thought about rising. She still felt a pleasant spark under her skin whenever she thought about it. Tonight she wanted to give him the same thrill. She wasn't sure she could pull it off, but she was determined to try. Tracie had done her homework, probably too much of it. She dug into history, guides, and message boards, learning everything from where these fantasies had originated to how modern couples made them work. At one point, she even found herself in a bookstore checkout line with titles she hoped no one would look too closely at. All of it was for Jamie, and for them. Because sharing a fantasy meant sharing a piece of the heart, too. Her nerves fluttered. She wasn't an expert. Not like the confident women he might have known before her. But this wasn't about them, it was about tonight. Earlier that week, she'd even worked up the courage to get real guidance from a woman named Rosie who opened her front door with a warm smile and zero judgment. "You're not performing on a stage," Rosie had told her, pouring coffee with casual grace. "You're connecting with someone you love. The outfit and the props? They're just storytelling. What matters is that you're doing this together." Tracie clung to those words now. She crossed over to the bed, heart hammering. Jamie watched her like she was a dream he wasn't sure he deserved. "We're doing this my way," she said, taking on the confident tone she'd practiced, though she had no idea if it sounded convincing. "Yes, ma'am," Jamie teased, voice low and thrilled. She fought a smile. "Stay in character," she reminded herself. Setting the prop aside, she skimmed her fingertips lightly along his arm, nothing dramatic, just a touch meant to say, "I'm here. We're okay." His breath hitched. "Good sign." "You trust me?" she asked quietly. "With everything," he answered, no hesitation. The words steadied her more than any research article ever had. She leaned closer, her hair brushing his cheek. "You're going to follow my lead tonight," she murmured. He nodded, all wide-eyed devotion. She placed a soft kiss at the corner of his mouth, not rough, not demanding, a promise. Then, another. And another. Soon they weren't laughing or playing roles anymore. Just two people who knew exactly how to find each other, even in the dark. Wrapped together, every worry she'd carried slipped away. There was no performance. No pressure. Just warmth, tangled limbs, shared breath, and the quiet joy of giving and receiving affection the way they wanted to. Later, with their heads resting on the same pillow, and the excitement giving way to soft smiles, Jamie whispered against her forehead. "You were perfect." Tracie flushed, her confidence blooming for real this time. Maybe she didn't need centuries-old history, or pages of advice, or intimidating props. She only needed him, and the courage to let herself be enough. That's how Tracie found herself dressed in costume, standing over the man she loved, who was laughing breathlessly as he tested the playful restraints he'd insisted they use. She took a steadying breath, reminding herself this was their shared adventure, something he'd dreamed up, something she wanted to explore with him. The excitement in his eyes told her she was doing just fine. To start, she traced a feather along his skin, teasing, light and full of mischief. His laughter turned to eager sighs as she brushed along his jaw, his neck, across his shoulders and down his sides. He wriggled and arched toward her touch, thoroughly caught up in the moment. Candles flickered around them, painting the room in warm light, as she added slow, deliberate kisses to her gentle touches. His whispered encouragement steadied her confidence. Every reaction, every grin, every tug against the cuffs told her they were perfectly in step. When their anticipation had built as high as it could go, Tracie leaned close and claimed his mouth with her own, and the rest of the night melted into caresses, laughter, and breathless affection. Their world narrowed to warmth and shared joy, until they finally collapsed together, spent and smiling. In the morning, they exchanged playful kisses while tidying up the costume pieces and props. Jamie watched her with unmistakable admiration. "Where did you learn to be so incredible?" he teased, pulling her into his arms. "Research," she said, cheeks warming. "And maybe a little inspiration." He kissed her again, delighted. "Well, whatever you did, I hope you keep doing it." They showered together, full of giggles and slippery embraces, and afterward dried each other with fluffy towels like they were in their own private world. Then reality returned. Jamie leaned against the counter, suddenly serious. "We have a party tonight. On Percival Wrigley's yacht." Tracie nodded, listening. "He's upset with the firm. We can't afford to lose him as a client." Jamie hesitated before adding, "It would help if you could charm him a little. Make sure he knows we're good people." Tracie paused with a half-buttered bagel in hand. "What exactly are you asking me to do?" "Just whatever helps him relax and enjoy the night. You're amazing with people." He kissed her temple with confidence, but not enough explanation. Her stomach tightened. The sweet scent of cinnamon suddenly felt sharp. What was he really asking? Was her role just to smile and make polite conversation? Or something far more unsettling? Her hand trembled just enough to notice.
Chapter 9. Lady in Red.
When the limo that had been dispatched to take them and two other couples to the yacht arrived at the marina, the party was in full swing. Tracie felt relaxed, in spite of the fact that Marilyn and Alan Spellman were two of the people who traveled to the yacht with them. Things had never warmed up between her and Marilyn, but it was as if Marilyn had been warned to be cordial tonight. It might also have been because the other couple in the limo was the new accountant and his young wife, a runway model. Fascinated with the slim brunette's career, Tracie had asked her a lot of questions, and the ride from the hotel to the dock had gone quickly. Marilyn had taken one look at Tracie's new red dress and red stiletto shoes and had glared at Jamie. Alexa and Ronald had both commented that Tracie looked ravishing. Tracie thanked them and remarked that the outfit was a gift from Jamie. This prompted another glare from his mother. Unfazed, Jamie pointed out that the dress was a business investment. "Well," replied his father, smiling and downing his second glass of champagne, "it's a good one." Marilyn elbowed her husband in the ribs when she thought no one was looking. At the gangway, the crew, dressed in crisp white shirts and dark trousers, took Tracie's and Jamie's luggage to their stateroom, and the 6 guests were shown on board and given brimming glasses of sparkling pink champagne in which fresh raspberries bounced up and down. The conversation got louder as alcohol flowed, and guests helped themselves to the lavish buffet. When Tracie was introduced to their host, Percival acknowledged, "I met you at that cocktail thing at the Spellmans. Then I was one of the 2,000 guests at your wedding." "I remember," Tracie said, holding out her hand. Instead of shaking it, Percival pulled her close and kissed her outstretched palm. "We'll get a lot better acquainted later when we deposit this lot back on dry land," he promised. A twinge of apprehension ran up her spine. "I'm looking forward to it," she answered, managing a wobbly smile. After all, Jamie was counting on her. Throughout the evening, Jamie continued to work the crowd. Left to her own devices, Tracie drank too much champagne. Conversations got funnier as her vision began to blur. The later it got, the more overt were the glances and touches from the men at the party. Tracie felt as if she were back at high school, only wearing nicer clothes. Fortunately, she still remembered how to fend off unwanted interest. By far, the most overt attention came from their host. Tracie tried to treat his hands roving on her body, and he whispered hot breath in her ear as lightly as she could, without being rude. After all, he was their host and a very big client. And Jamie had asked her to charm Percival. Besides, she liked the way the smooth-talking man's attention so obviously enraged Marilyn Spellman. A couple of times, her grim-faced mother-in-law had started toward her, only to have Alan Spellman pull her back. It seemed that he was aware of her conversation with Jamie and of what she was expected to do for the business. Eventually, the yacht docked, and the guests who had not been invited to spend the night were shuttled off to waiting limousines. As she passed by Tracie on her way out, Marilyn hissed, "Behave yourself and don't embarrass our family." Tracie smiled sweetly at Marilyn and whispered, "Just enhancing the corporate image, Mother Spellman." Marilyn shot daggers at her. "Let's get you safely off to your room, little lady," a silky voice said as Tracie listed to the left. She felt strong arms picking her up, and everything went black. With a lurch, Tracie came to her senses. Her dress was neatly folded on a chair. Her shoes were lined up in front of the dress. She moved the sheet and realized she was wearing nothing. Her head ached, and her mouth felt as if someone had stuffed it with steel wool. She recalled champagne, bottles of it. But this was more disturbing than a hangover. Everything felt off. The room was strange. The walls seemed to be leaning. Her bed felt tipped. And try as she might, she could recall nothing of the party the evening before beyond Marilyn Spellman's hissing at her as she left the yacht. The yacht. Tracie breathed a sigh of relief. That would explain the gentle rocking motion and the strange room. But where is Jamie? And who undressed me? And how did my clothes get folded so neatly? With a lurch, Tracie managed to get upright. She placed a shaky hand on the wall and moved gingerly toward the bathroom. Perhaps a cold shower would revive her and jog her memory. Standing beneath the warm spray of the shower, Tracie steadied herself with one hand against the tile. She worked jasmine-scented soap across her skin, letting the steam curl around her like a comforting blanket. Her body ached in unfamiliar places, a reminder of just how new everything was. What in hell happened last night? She wondered. No details materialized. On the one hand, she thirsted for information. On the other hand, she hoped she'd never recall the past evening's events. She'd had hangovers before, far too many of them since becoming Tracie Spellman. But she'd always been able to recall what had transpired during her drunken partying. To have a completely blank slate surrounding last night was terrifying. What if I'd done something horrible? Finding nothing else to wear, Tracie donned her red dress from the evening before and, carrying her impossibly high shoes, skittered down the passageway to her own room. In whose room did I spend the night? She wondered again, slipping the key card into the slot on her door. Lucky these cards come with room numbers, she mused. I wonder how many others would have difficulty locating their stateroom otherwise. She half expected to see Jamie here, but there was no sign of him except for the rumpled bed and the wet towels on the bathroom floor. But he hadn't been gone for long if the still-steamed bathroom mirror was any indication. Taped to her luggage, Tracie found a note. Well done, my love. Percival can't wipe the contented look off his face. Meet me in the dining room as soon as you get this. We've got a bit of a situation. She wondered what Jamie meant by a situation. Hadn't she fixed the situation? His note would seem to indicate that. What other situation could there be? At Jamie's mention of Percival Wrigley, Tracie recalled their pre-party conversation in which Jamie had asked Tracie to charm Percival into leaving his money invested with the Spellmans. The phrase, whatever it takes, lingered in her recall. Tracie pulled her hair back and clipped it atop her head. She pulled a casual outfit from the tiny closet where the staff had hung her clothes and added a dab of makeup. Lucky for me, there was no one in the corridor when I made my escape, she thought. One look at my state of dishevelment, and they'd have known immediately that I hadn't spent the night in my own room. Now that she thought about it, not seeing staff scurrying around in cleaning rooms was strange. Giving her appearance one final appraisal, Tracie grabbed her tote and followed the signs to the dining room.
Chapter 10. Man Overboard.
Before she entered the dining room, Tracie was struck by the silence. While people sat in groups of 6 at the round linen-covered tables, no one spoke. They all seemed to be in shock. Spotting Jamie at a table with an empty chair, she slid into her spot, smiling shyly at the other 6 people at the table. What's going on? Tracie whispered to Jamie, glancing around the room at the stony faces of the 50 people assembled there. I'll explain later, Jamie said, nodding at the podium at the front of the room. There was a clicking sound as a tall, thin man in his 40s tapped the microphone. He straightened his red tie and shot the French cuffs of his white shirt beyond the sleeves of his tailored navy suit. All eyes turned to him. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, he said. I'm Detective Baird with the San Diego Police. Last evening at 3:15, our dispatcher received a call that a passenger aboard this boat had disappeared. He was last seen having a heated discussion with another passenger shortly after 2:30. When his wife went to look for him, he was gone. Police and the Coast Guard were called. The crew searched the ship and found no trace of him. It appears that he may have gone overboard. The Coast Guard is presently searching the water. Police will be questioning all passengers still on board. We've sent a team to question guests who left the boat after it was docked. At this point in time, we haven't any more information. If you took photos on board last night, we are asking that they be emailed to this address. Detective Baird flashed an email address on the screen behind the podium. Our investigation team will be questioning each of you. Please provide an account of the proceedings here last evening as full. Everything, no matter how unrelated it may seem, will help us piece together what happened. I apologize for the inconvenience. We'll get you on your way as quickly as possible. The captain has set up a boardroom where we can conduct our investigation. In the meantime, please sit tight. Thank you. As guests were led to be questioned, Tracie turned to Jamie. Who is missing? She asked. Is this the situation you mentioned in your note? It seems that Howard Rich has vanished, Jamie told her. He wore a lazy smile, as if he found the whole thing entertaining. Isn't that the guy you and your father had the huge blow-up with, over a client he stole from you? Tracie asked. Oddly enough, Jamie replied, we had a rather heated discussion in the wee hours last night. It seems old Howard is wangling to get Percival's business, hinting that our methods are not completely above board. Tracie's eyes grew wide. You are the one he was arguing with? Do the police know? If they don't, I'm sure the grief-stricken wife will have filled them in. At best, I'm a person of interest. At worst, I'm their prime suspect for whatever they think happened to Howard. You seem amazingly calm about all of this, Tracie noted. Did anyone see you after your discussion? When Howard and I finished talking, I had a double scotch at the bar and went to our room. The rest of the night, what little remained of it, is a blur. At 6 this morning, we were all roasted from our rooms and shuffled into the dining room. I've called the old man and alerted him to a possible problem. His lawyers are on their way. Until they arrive, I'm to say nothing. This whole thing is like living inside a murder mystery, Tracie said. How did I miss the call to come to the dining room? I suspect the owner of this fair ship was protecting your reputation and his, when he failed to mention you were sharing his stateroom, Jamie replied, smiling. Even this disappearing act Richie Rich has pulled can't wipe the satisfied look off Percival's face. He looks like the old tomcat that was just served a dish of cream. You must have been magnificent. So you're good with Percival? Tracie asked, strangely proud of the part she'd played in helping her husband's business. Oh, I think with your charming performance and Howard's fortuitous disappearance, Percival will be happy to stay with us.
Chapter 11. Person of Interest.
After the Spellman lawyers arrived on the scene, Jamie was questioned by the police. He was told that he was a person of interest because of the heated conversation the evening before. What were you arguing about? Detective Baird asked him. Pausing to get a nod from his lawyers, Jamie replied, Howard and I were having an animated discussion about business. You know we are both in investments. We'd both had a lot to drink, I must confess, and our talk may have gotten loud and distracted the merriment of our fellow guests. When I went to the bar for a nightcap, Howard remained on deck. His balance wasn't too steady. I cautioned him not to get too close to the rail. I won't tell you what his reply was. When was this? The detective asked, scanning his notes. I'd guess between 2:30 and 3, Jamie replied. I really didn't check my watch. Can anyone corroborate your whereabouts? Detective Baird asked, staring at Jamie knowingly. The bartender can attest to when I left the dining room. After that, I crashed in my room, alone. The cameras in the corridors, and when I swiped my room card should tell you the rest. What did they ask? Tracie said, biting her lower lip when Jamie returned. What will they ask me? Just tell them exactly what happened, Jamie told her. Give them as many details as you can recall. Well, that's just it, Tracie said, worrying a thumbnail. I don't recall much of anything after your mother left. Percival brought me a drink, and the rest of the night is a complete blank. So you don't remember anything about your romp with old Percy? Asked Jamie. Pity. I was hoping for details. When Tracie returned from questioning, she said, They asked me why I wasn't in my room until 8 this morning. What did you tell them? I said I was meeting with one of my husband's business clients, and we lost track of time. I passed out and have no recollection of where I was, or what I did until 20 to 8 this morning. I admitted I'd had a lot to drink, and much of the evening was a blur. They asked me if I'd witnessed the argument between you and Howard. What did you tell them? Jamie asked. The truth. You were busy talking with clients, and I was pretty much left to my own devices. If you had a discussion with this man, I didn't notice, or I had already left the party by then. That's good, babe, Jamie replied. Unless they can produce witnesses or damning photos or a body, they haven't got much of a case. Who knows? Howard may have pulled a disappearing act. I heard he and his wife are having problems.
Chapter 12. Oh, what a tangled web.
Eventually, everyone was questioned and sent on their way. Jamie was instructed to make himself available should the police have more questions. He and his father seemed tense in the days that followed, but Tracie tacked that up to concerns about accounts of their biggest clients and to the fact that there was still no sign of Howard Rich. While not warm and welcoming, Marilyn seemed grudgingly resigned to Tracie's place in the family. In spite of the uneasy truce between the two women, both avoided the other. Marilyn was kept busy with her charity fundraising projects, lunch at the country club, her personal trainer, and a round of golf once a week with her long-standing foursome. Tracie was content to make meals, put the finishing touches on her new house, and sun by the pool. She'd taken Lottie up on her offer to ride. Both Jamie and his father were delighted that she was spending time with an important client. Percival had called to apologize for having departed from his stateroom so hastily the morning Howard Rich went missing. He invited Jamie and her to dine aboard his yacht, and they'd had a pleasant time. No reference to what had transpired on their last visit had been mentioned. While he was an attentive host, Percival did not make overtures to Tracie. Just as things seemed to be returning to normal, Jamie opened the paper one morning and whistled. Whoa! What do we have here? Tracie glanced at the social section. There were photos of her and Jamie boarding the yacht. Then her eyes traveled to another, larger photo. Who is the mystery guest? The headline read. The caption identified the man leaning over the bed as billionaire financier Percival Wrigley. Clearly, there was a nude woman on the bed, but her face was hidden. The edge of a small rose tattoo peeked out of the sheet carelessly thrown over her. Tracie and Jamie recognized the small rose tattoo. Where did this come from? Tracie asked in horror. Someone must have planted a camera in old Percy's room, Jamie said. Chill out, babe. No one knows about that tattoo except you and me, and maybe Percival, if he wasn't too drunk or distracted to notice. It's fine. In fact, this photo might be good insurance that Percival won't soon be contemplating yanking his account from Spellman Financial. Whoever leaked this to the press may have done us a favor. He walked down the hall, whistling. Dad and I have a meeting this afternoon. We're meeting here because we want to avoid the press that has been sniffing around. Will you bring us coffee, babe? And stop worrying. You look like the kid who stole cookies from the cookie jar. Relax. Everything will work out just fine. Still upset by the photo, Tracie busied herself in the kitchen, setting out coffee things. She was just about to push open the door of the study and deliver the tray of coffee and snacks when she overheard the two men talking. She froze in her tracks. That was quite the plan, Jamie, his father said, amusement dripping from every word. I'll admit, I was considering hiring someone to win Percival over. But sending your wife to charm him? Clever. I wouldn't have guessed she'd go along with something like that. She's really that captivating? Jamie leaned back, smug confidence in every line of his posture. Captivating doesn't even begin to cover it. She's drawn to excitement, that motorcycle sealed the deal. She's eager, enthusiastic, and connects with people easily. You should have seen how quickly Lottie warmed up to her. Trust me, Dad, she's exactly what we need. And once Hargrave meets her, he'll be hooked. You're right. Old Hard Woody will get a stiffy just watching her moves. When can we set that up? Asked Jamie's father. We've got to make sure our big accounts are secure before that jerk Howard Rich gets back on the scene. I know, Dad, but I don't want to push too hard. I want to keep some of that action for myself. Can't give it all away. Besides, I don't want Tracie to get suspicious. That's a good point. Hey, are you still seeing that little secretary you set up in the condo in Macon? Jamie nodded. She's been a good source of information on potential clients working at the bank. But she's bucking for a promotion. If she leaves the investments department, she won't be as much use to us as she has been. Besides, she is making nesting noises again. And the fees just went up on that condo. I'm thinking it might be time to cut our losses there. Whatever you think, son. You've always had a good sense of timing with those contacts. I'll miss the action I was getting with her, though. She was far enough away that your mother didn't know anything about her, and yet, an easy drive when I was supposed to be at a conference. Any blowback from the missing Howard Rich? Asked Jamie. Our lawyers say the police are tabling that case. It's hard to charge someone when there's no body and no evidence of foul play. I'd be very surprised if they ever find a body, Jamie said. Those waters are full of sharks. If a drunk fell overboard, he'd be shark meat before he sank to the bottom. Nothing left out there except a Rolex. How'd you get him over the railing? Asked Alan. Piece of cake. Tinted his drink with a little surprise. Flipped him over as he was passing out, then continued to play the shouting match for another 10 minutes. Came back inside shouting a final argument at where people thought Howard was still standing. Then had a Scotch nightcap and off to bed. My keycard and the cameras in the hall were my alibi. I hope I never get on the wrong side of you, son, said his father. Not as long as you're signing my checks, Dad. So how much longer are we going to need your wife? Asked Alan. Your mother is making a big fuss about Tiffany again. Tell Mom to cool her jets. Tiffany is never going to be as useful to us as Tracie is. Besides, Audra and Lottie like her. We don't want to piss them off. No. That's for sure. Your grandmother still scares me. And as for that Amazon friend of hers, I shudder to think what she'd do to us. When Tracie goes, it will have to be her idea. We can't risk bad press. Speaking of the press, Alan said, how did they get their hands on those Percival tapes? You mean from the cameras I installed in his stateroom? Asked Jamie. You put those cameras in there? Of course. I wanted to see what was happening. The idea of leaking a shot where the girl's face isn't visible came to me later. It's insurance against Percival, in case he decides to take his business elsewhere. I've got to hand it to you, son. You've got a shrewd mind, just like your grandfather. I'm sorry I never got a chance to meet him, Jamie commented. He must have been something. He was something. That's for sure. Meanest old son of a gun you'd ever want to meet. He'd cheat his own grandmother. And he didn't hesitate to beat us over the smallest things he deemed infractions. The husband Audra likes to paint for the public, and is not the father I remember. I don't blame her for taking up with Lottie. I'd have sworn off men too if I'd been her. The business would not be standing if Mother hadn't poured her inheritance into it. I wonder if Tracie has forgotten about the coffee, Jamie remarked. You asked her to bring it down here? His father exclaimed. What if she heard us talking? Chill out, Dad. Tracie adores me. And so what if she heard us talking? It's not like a wife can testify against her husband. If you were her husband, Alan reminded him. Well, there's that, Jamie admitted. I don't like to think what would happen if Tracie ever guessed our wedding was sheer fiction. The things we do to keep Marilyn happy, exclaimed Alan. You know she still expects you to marry that socialite? We'll cross that bridge when we come to it, Jamie replied. Tiffany is too prim and proper to make an interesting wife. I have some plans that the straight-laced Tiffany would never agree to. Tracie hasn't outlived her usefulness yet. Tiffany will always be available if we need her pedigree and her father's millions. Mother will see to that. So what are these plans? Alan asked. Well, I'm thinking of turning the basement into an S&M dungeon of sorts, Jamie said. I broached the idea of inviting another couple, and Tracie didn't say no. She seemed only concerned that it would not happen in our bedroom. You lucky sob, exclaimed Alan. It'd be a hot day in December before I ever got Marilyn to agree to anything other than the missionary position once a month. There's a reason you're an only child. Too much information, Dad, Jamie shuddered. So, who do you have in mind? Anyone I know? Well, as a matter of fact, Tracie seemed to hit it off with your new accountant's wife. The one with the great legs? Asked Alan. I thought we'd feel them out and see what they had to say, suggested Jamie. Any problems with that? Why would I have a problem? Asked Alan. Well, Ronald works for us. If it doesn't work out, it could make things a little sticky at work. No problem. If it doesn't work out, we can always come up with some reason to fire him. It's not without precedent. Remember those secretaries you dated? Now that I think about it, remarked Jamie, they aren't there anymore. Exactly, said his dad. Is there anything else we need to discuss? I could use a cup of coffee. Just then, there was a tap at the door. Jamie opened it to find Tracie balancing a large tray with coffee cups, a coffee pot, and a plate of cookies. Sorry I took so long, she said with a smile. The tray was heavy. Her mind whirled as she deftly poured coffee and passed homemade chocolate chip cookies. When she returned to the kitchen, she picked up the phone and dialed. A raspy voice answered. Lottie, said Tracie, we need to talk.
Epilogue. She Who Laughs Last.
With a sigh of contentment, Tracie looked at the final copy of her exclusive fashion designs. The show was all set. Her efficient staff had worked out all the details. She smiled as she pictured the Spellman's posh friends, seated at their $1,000 a-plate tables, ogling her unique designs, and paying four-figure prices to acquire the honor of wearing a Tracie Rutherford original gown. It was unbelievable that 3 years had elapsed since she discovered how the Spellmans had used her, manipulated her to pleasure their clients, and then intended to cast her aside, penniless and demoralized. Well, the last laugh had been on them, thanks to the surprising support of her unlikely friends, Lottie Chambers and Audra Spellman. Tracie's tearful call to Lottie had produced almost instant results. With a quavering voice, Tracie had told the two friends how Jamie intended to pimp her out to charm the male clients. She related how Jamie and his father had conspired to get rid of their chief competitor, Howard Rich, and how her marriage wasn't legal. Audra paled when Tracie told them Jamie had purchased a condo for a girl who worked for a competing bank, and that, in return, she had given them the names of prospective clients. With a shudder, she described how both men were being intimate with this girl. So, what do they intend to do if you don't go along? Asked Lottie. I can answer that, Audra replied. They will do what they have always done. Turf out what is no longer expedient to keep. Tracie isn't married to my grandson apparently, so she'd get nothing. Well, that's a little cold-blooded, even for them, Lottie said. There are lots of bodies buried under Spellman Investments, Audra murmured. Some of them were disposed of by my dearly departed. So what should we do, Audra? Asked Lottie. Leave those two to me, Audra said. I know how to play their game. With a hard-eyed glance at the other women, she picked up the phone. The two women had swooped in and convinced Tracie that her eye for business attire was a gold mine. They'd bankrolled her first fashion showing of her exclusive line of business clothes. Now she was releasing a new line of evening wear. Since both women were hugely successful in their individual fields, Tracie had allowed them to rescue her. Their investment in her fashion house had proved astute. They'd made a bundle on that startup and had insisted on plowing the profits back into her business. As a result, Tracie did not have to go public to fund her latest expansion. She didn't have to answer to a board of directors, just two feisty ladies. Tracie thought back with amusement to Avril's assessment of her clothing sense. She knew her former assistant must be cringing at Tracie's success in a field where the proper Brit thought she was an abysmal failure. Her mind turned to the fact that the Spellmans thought she'd be left destitute. They weren't laughing now. The high-profile trial of their only son, Jamie, for the suspicious drowning death of his archenemy, Howard Rich, had cost the senior Spellman a bundle in legal fees and had greatly jeopardized the reputation of their investment firm. When Tracie produced the tape of her conversation with Jamie, the Spellmans laughed in her face, pointing out that a wife could not testify against her husband. Tracie reminded them that, according to their directive, Jamie's marriage to her had been a sham. Hence, she was not his wife. Then the story about her wild night with Percival had backfired in their faces when someone leaked to the press the fact that Tracie had been sent to charm their client as incentive to keep him happy with their firm. Although they denied that Tracie had acted on their instructions, she was given a healthy exit amount to deter from talking to the media. Just when the Spellmans thought things couldn't get worse, someone blew the whistle on their dubious investment strategies, and clients jumped like rats from a sinking ship. Tracie had always suspected the informer was Avril. So the company folded. Jamie was convicted and was awaiting sentencing. Unable to afford bail, he was destined to await the outcome in jail. Both he and his father were under investigation by the SEC. They'd never work in the investment industry again. Finding it impossible to live under a cloud of bad press, Marilyn Spellman had cashed in her jewelry and run off with an undisclosed amount of money she'd squirreled away for just such an occasion. Rumor had it, she was living on one of the Caribbean islands with her personal trainer. When they heard this, the three women had laughed and toasted Marilyn's health. "Looks like she is a survivor after all," said Lottie. Tracie checked her Rolex. She was due for an important meeting with her backers, Lottie Chambers and Audra Spellman. When her executive secretary, Avril Steele, stuck her head in the door to remind Tracie of the time, she found her employer just zipping up her briefcase. Avril surveyed her crisp navy suit and matching pumps from the Tracie Rutherford business attire collection and smiled in satisfaction. The end.
Sneak peek for the boss's claim. We hope you enjoyed listening to Whips and Chains by Michelle Love. Now please listen to a sneak peek for the boss's claim by Michelle Love. Chapter 1. Evan.
Well, Jones, if it goes through, we could be very rich men. Are you ready for that? Evan grinned, as his junior partner said the usual cautious thing. The man was brilliant. Evan had chosen him specifically for his intelligence and vision, but he lacked self-assurance. Someday, Evan was sure he would help Jones attain the confidence that men in their business couldn't do without. Well, ready or not, my friend, it's coming. So get ready. Get the details for that dinner planned. We're taking the right step. I know it, you know it. And sooner or later, the board is going to come around. By the time Evan hung up 10 minutes later, Jones had appeared to be at least somewhat more certain. Evan shook his head. He was a man who loved his work almost as much as he loved the luxuries it gave him, but sometimes it was like pulling teeth. He dropped a few bills on the table, more than enough to cover lunch and the tip, and walked out into the mild London afternoon. Spring never seemed to last very long in London, he mused. Soon enough, it would be sweltering summer, and he would want to drive or be driven everywhere he went. For now, though, spring was gorgeous, and the weather so mild that a walk back to his quiet London office seemed like a good idea. At least it did before a cyclist veered up over the curb, just long enough to snag Evan's arm on a metal handlebar spur. Evan swore. The cyclist yelped, and Evan was dragged forward by a yard before he finally managed to pull away. He looked down at his sleeve, ignoring the bruise likely forming from the impact in favor of a sartorial once-over. As Evan stood there muttering under his breath, the inept cyclist hurried away, leaving Evan cursing a blue streak. Evan was a man who liked to dress well, and even if he wasn't going to be seeing any investors today, he was dressed in a slate blue suit that was rather a favorite. At least it had been, until that bicycle snagged the sleeve and tore a short jagged slash in the arm. Evan hesitated for a moment. He was tempted to simply toss the suit or donate it. But he hated the idea of giving up an otherwise perfectly good suit. Savile Row wasn't far away from where he was, just slightly past his own office. The bustling street was lined with the finest tailors in the Western world, and he made his way to a discreet shop set back from the thoroughfare, the only indication of its presence at all a handsome brass sign on the door. He had been coming to Monterey's for suits since he was in his 20s, and he had the utmost faith in their service. Evan climbed up the narrow staircase, and an old-fashioned bell chimed above his head when he let himself in. Instead of seeing the gray-haired older man who had handled his suits for ages, behind the desk stood a lovely young woman. She couldn't have been a day out of her early 20s, with a thick head of ash-blonde hair and a curvy figure dressed in an old-fashioned cotton blouse and a neat tweed skirt. In spite of her obvious youth, she wore hose and clunky dark shoes. She also had her nose firmly buried in a fashion magazine as Evan walked in. She was so distracted with the magazine that Evan had to clear his throat before she looked up in shock. "Oh my goodness." She hurried over to greet him, her sweet heart-shaped face furrowed with worry. "I'm so sorry, sir, but I didn't hear the shop bell ring. Welcome to Monterey's. My name is Anna. How can I help you?" When she looked up at him with a shy smile, Evan was enchanted to see that her eyes were a deep amber, something he was certain he had never seen before. "Good afternoon. Can you tell me where Edmund might be?" "Oh, Mr. Monterey is seeing to wool shipments from Iceland today, and he won't be in until late. May I ask you what you need?" He pondered the situation momentarily, before extending his arm, displaying the ragged sleeve. It was unlikely that the secretary would be interested, but perhaps she would convey his haste to her employer if she saw the damage. I require this fixed sooner rather than later." Anna examined the tear on his sleeve with the calm gravity that a surgeon would bestow on his patient. "That is a rather bad tear, sir," she said thoughtfully. "May I ask how you came by it?" "Street brawl." She looked up at him, as if unsure whether to take him seriously, and Evan laughed at the disbelief in her lovely eyes. "A cyclist snagged it." Her smile left him slightly breathless. "I was going to guess that it was something like that. A snag and then a drag. That makes for an awkward repair, though." She drew her full lip between her teeth and worried it. "It really does." Evan raised his eyebrow at her curiously. "You sound very sure of that." "I might be new here, sir, but I'm hardly new to the craft." Evan blinked at her, noticing the wide pockets of her skirts for the first time, and the stub of measuring tape that peeked out like an insolent tongue. Anna did seem a little dowdy to be a secretary, even for a business as conservative as Monterey's. In that case, no, he thought in surprise. It couldn't be. Monterey was far too old-fashioned too. "So Edmund has started doing trade in women's dresses as well?" Evan asked. "And you are a seamstress?" Anna drew herself up to her full height, which couldn't have been more than 5'5", if that. The look she gave him was defiant and more than a little proud, and he found himself becoming even more intrigued with the girl. "As a matter of fact, sir, a woman who makes custom dresses of a high quality is called a dressmaker rather than a seamstress. I am not a dressmaker. I am a tailor." Her voice dared him to make something out of it, and Evan swallowed a smile. For some reason, he had no interest in puncturing her pride, as much as he enjoyed doing it to pompous idiots in his business sector. "All right then, Anna." He gestured at the tear in his sleeve, and she looked at it again. "What would you propose to do with this? Would you simply get rid of the whole suit?" "No, I wouldn't," Anna replied. "I would fix it by hand. I could have it done for you in less than half an hour." "But that sounds splendid," Evan said warmly, more than pleased at her efficiency. "If you take a look, you'll see that I have an account here. It should be no problem to bill it." She looked worried. "Well, sir, that might be a little difficult. You know Mr. Monterey, and he is very particular. I have a feeling that you might be one of our top-tier clients, and that means that under no circumstances am I to undertake any repairs for you without his direct and immediate supervision." "I see." Well, I have decided that doesn't matter. Sir. Evan rested one large hand slightly on her small, slender shoulder. If you think that I am a top-tier client, you must know that I am someone who is used to getting my way, yes. I want you to fix this up for me. No excuses now.
Chapter 2. Anna.
She should have known that the man was trouble the moment he startled her. If it had been anyone else, she would have been completely fine, but something about seeing this man in the doorway made her mouth go dry. He had to be in his 40s, at least 15 years older than her own 22 years of age. He was dark-haired with just a touch of silver at his temples, and unlike so many of the men she knew, he was in amazing shape. He wore his American suit like a knight dressed for battle, and there was something in his bright green eyes that gave her butterflies in her stomach. When he set his hand on her shoulders, tingles ran through her entire body, and his smile that made her own lips curve reflexively upwards in response. Of course, just because the client was ridiculously attractive, didn't mean that she should be doing what she was doing. Though she'd couched her words both for the sake of the client and her own employment, Mr. Montgomery was far more than just particular. He was a tyrant with an iron fist that lorded over his own small kingdom with the eye of an eagle and a heart of flint. His exacting standards made him a veritable legend on a street of legendary tailors, but also made him a terrifying boss. She should have said no. Truly, Anna should have looked away from the man's mesmerizing green eyes and told him firmly that there was a code of business here that she had to adhere to. But instead, she found herself somehow escorting him to a comfortable brocade armchair in the visitor's alcove and pouring him a glass of wine to enjoy as he waited. When she asked for his jacket, he gave her a bemused smile that certainly seemed more flirtatious than it should have been. Usually, I'm not the one who was being asked to strip. It was mild as such things went, but Anna found that she couldn't stop herself from blushing. The worst part was that she thought he knew she was blushing too. Anna felt far too aware that the client, a Mr. Evan Sheffield apparently, from the card he presented, could see exactly what she was doing from his alcove. She expected him to pull out a phone or to pick up one of the books from the shelves that lined the alcove, but instead, he sat there in his shirt sleeves, sipped his wine, and watched her with a fascinated expression. It's nothing you haven't dealt with before, and if he stays quiet and doesn't scream at you, he's already going to be far better than Mr. Montgomery, isn't he? Just do the job, girl. She draped the jacket over the dummy, pulling up one of the tall chairs so she could work on it without straining herself. The tear was bad, but hardly as bad as it could have been, and she realized she recognized the cloth. Is this one of ours? Anna barely knew she had spoken out loud before she got an answer. It is, Evan confirmed, his voice a comfortable drawl. I get all of my suits here. Ah, I see. She was just putting in the first few stitches when the hairs on the back of her neck prickled, and she spun the chair around. Instead of remaining seated in his alcove and enjoying his drink, Evan Sheffield was suddenly behind her, watching her as she worked. Anna's cheeks went red. Sir. What? She stuttered. Believe me when I say I will give all my attention to your suit. You do not need to worry that I am going to ruin it. I know what I am doing. But I don't, he said with a surprisingly boyish smile. I only wanted to see. Anna told herself that he was a top-tier client. Telling him where to go and what to do was even more likely to get her fired than breaking the particular rule about attending to top clients solely with her boss present. So instead, she mumbled something about it being fine and returned to her work. When he next spoke, his voice was soft, almost conciliatory. You must have worked very hard to get here. All my life, she said absently, her eyes focused on the fine fabric while her fingers moved over it swiftly, the rhythms of the needle as familiar as breathing. I've always loved men's suits. The hang, the drape, the endless amount of creativity wrapped in what most would consider to be one of the most conservative packages in the world. A good suit is a work of art, Mr. Sheffield. Call me Evan. A peculiar shiver ran down her spine, and somehow she knew that he was aware of it. He wasn't asking her to call him by his first name. It was an order, and she nodded almost unconsciously.
Yes, Evan.
She returned her attention to the torn fabric beneath her fingertips. Within a matter of minutes, Anna nodded, pleased that her initial assessment from afar had been mistaken. Up close, she could see that the tear was not as severe as she'd worried. This will be an easy fix. The repair should be almost invisible. Evan smiled widely, making her feel as though she'd said something about repairing a bodily limb, rather than a sleeve. I'm glad you could fix it. It is one of my favorites. I would love to see you in something Italian, though. Anna nearly dropped her needle when those words popped out of her mouth. What is wrong with you? For half a moment, she wondered if she had been lucky enough that Evan had somehow missed it, but then he chuckled. Italian, eh? And why is that? Well, you're wearing an American suit right now, Anna mumbled, seeing no way out of the conversation she'd unintentionally initiated. It's bigger, boxier, even if it is well fit to you. I suppose that if I had my way, you would be dressed in Italian because it's slimmer, sleeker. You have an excellent frame for Italian, lean and long, and of course, you have the looks for it. If she hadn't been finishing off the seam, Anna was certain she would have fallen over at her own words. Gosh, what was wrong with her? She had gotten so very far in the tailoring world by keeping her head down and her mouth shut, and now she looked like she was going to get fired over speaking to a client as if she were his dear friend. Instead of being offended, however, Evan seemed delighted. That sounds interesting. I can't say that I've ever thought much about the kind of suits I've worn. All I know is that Edmund makes the ones that make me look the best. I've come to have some fairly high expectations. He was silent for a long, pensive moment before adding, and now you're telling me that I could do better. Anna was determined to keep a resolute silence. Saying anything further was only likely to stir up trouble. Then to her surprise, Evan came to stand by her side, and he touched the tip of her sharp chin with his finger, making her look up. The gesture should have been far too intimate from a stranger, but somehow, coming from this man, there was something simply right about it. Almost dreamily she met his eyes and he smiled, showing off white and even teeth. Tell me what you think I should be wearing. Italian, she said without hesitation. You look powerful and imposing in this suit today. It also made you look heavy and landbound. In Italian suits, you would be like a knife cutting through the world. His sharp eyes narrowed. I have to admit, I don't mind the sound of that. And no black, Anna went on, unable to stop herself as she imagined the privilege of dressing such a handsome man. It's too severe for you. But navy, yes, and a pale morning gray, possibly with a pearl blue shirt. She was so concentrated on the idea of dressing Evan, of looking into his deep, forest green eyes, that for the second time in the day, she missed the bell above the door ringing. But she didn't miss the shout of rage, as it came up almost behind her. What in the name of God are you doing?
Chapter 3. Evan.
Edmund Montgomery was a tall and powerfully built man, and he filled his space like a steam locomotive. He came thumping into the room with eyes full of fury, and for a moment, Evan wanted to step in front of Anna to protect her. He began to step forward, but Montgomery stopped short and scowled at the woman. The look on Anna's face was equal parts dismay and fear, Evan noted, and he hated both expressions, missing her confidence that had been there only moments earlier when she'd been discussing options for his clothing. The woman knew her business, no two ways around it. It was a quality Evan found exceedingly appealing, so to see it vanish so abruptly galled him. I asked you a question, Montgomery snapped, his face reddening. What do you think you are doing? This gentleman came in, Anna said quietly, clearly accustomed to being berated. The thought of that sat very poorly with Evan. He asked me to fix this sleeve. Sir, I tried to tell him that it was shop policy to wait for you, but he insisted. And if he insisted you should burn down the building, would you have done that as well? Montgomery seethed. All he asked you to do, after all, was to take my grandfather's shop's reputation in your two hands and cast it into the garbage. "She's right," Evan cut in. He knew that this was a matter between an employee and an employer. By all rights, he should stay out of it, but he had never been all that good about staying out of things when there was an injustice being done. "I'm the one who told her to fix my damned jacket." "And of course, your jacket will be fixed, Mr. Sheffield." Monterey turned obsequious, which only further irritated Evan. "This is more a matter of an impertinent employee. My taking her on was too big a risk, I'm afraid, simply so she could attain some kind of ridiculous dream." A glance at Anna made Evan's blood boil. She sat with her head lowered, eyes cast down, looking so damn small and repentant, and for what? For wanting to help him at his own insistence. Evan had never been a man who tolerated fools or bullies, and as he was beginning to realize, Edmund Monterey was both. "Clearly, you were a chance that I should never have taken," Monterey turned back to Anna. "And when you leave here today for the last time, you can be sure that no one on Savile Row will be as foolish as I was." "Please, sir, just give me another chance," Anna said in a low voice, lifting her head, her hands clenching and unclenching. Her eyes were beseeching, an expression that cut through Evan painfully. "I was only doing what I thought best." "What you thought best?" Edmund sneered, and it sounded as if he was ready to fly into another tirade when Evan cut him off. "That is enough." The words were uttered calmly, but they didn't need violence or volume to cut through Edmund's vitriol. When the master tailor turned back to him, he was contrite, likely having realized he'd stepped over the line in front of the wrong person. Bullies were good at judging such things. "I am so sorry, sir, that this had to happen in front of you." He all but wagged a tail, and looked at Evan in hopes of forgiveness. "You can be assured." "When I said that was enough," Evan said coldly, "I meant it." Finally, Edmund shut up, and Evan took a deep breath to calm himself. The last thing that anyone needed right now was his flying off the handle, as much as he was tempted to do just that. "This young lady helped me while you were unavailable. She understood your damned rules, but I insisted. I can see now that I did not put her in the best situation, and that's unfortunate, but I also did not expect you to be such an unreasonable son of a gun." Monterey stared at him, unaccustomed to ever being addressed in such a manner. "Sir, you do not understand. Savile Row has traditions and a story of service to the quality that goes back." "I don't care," Evan interrupted. "Not about you, not about Savile Row, and not about your shop. What I care about is Anna, and about how very shabbily you have treated her. Anna, how much do you make here?" Anna dropped her gaze again, and named her salary. Not surprised, Evan glanced back at Edmund in disgust. "You were cheating her. How did I fail to see the truth behind your fine fabrics?" He shook his head, and directed his next statement at Anna. "Come work for me, and I'll double that. If we still suit one another in 6 months' time, I will triple it." Anna stared at him, her honey-colored eyes wide. "Work for you doing what?" "Being my personal dresser, shopper, tailor, whatever. It might not be your dream of working on Savile Row, but by God, at least it will pay you a living wage." For a moment, he didn't think she was going to do it. He thought that her chains might have been too strong, and that she would stay here at Monterey's begging a bona fide idiot for a second chance. Then her pretty face took on a look of determination, and she nodded sharply. "Mr. Sheffield, thank you. I accept. Mr. Monterey, perhaps you were gearing up to fire me, or perhaps you only wanted to use me as a scratching post for a while before you continued claiming my designs as your own. Either way, I am tendering my resignation, effective immediately." It was startlingly satisfying watching Monterey's jaw drop. The man went pale, and then red, and then he started shouting. "You can't do this. I'll make sure that you never work in any shop again. You cannot throw away everything you had here. Go get your things." Evan kept himself between Anna and the unhinged man. "Everything. If he tries to keep back anything that's yours, I'll send my corporate lawyers after him. It'd be appropriate, given that you are now my employee." When Monterey started to speak again, Evan cut him off with a sharp hand gesture. "No. I have had enough of listening to you." Anna disappeared momentarily and reappeared again quickly, carrying a small suitcase and her jacket draped over her arm. Evan smiled inwardly as she ignored Monterey entirely and looked at him. "Shall we go, Mr. Sheffield?" "Of course." She maintained her poise as they walked out the door, and made it about halfway down the block before she started shaking. She looked so overwrought that Evan put his arm around her shoulders, and she curled up to his body with a nearly innocent trust that he found touching. "What in the world have I done?" she asked wildly, and Evan laughed. "The right thing, I promise you." There was a small curry shop nearby, and once she had had a few bites of fiery vindaloo in her and a few sips of water, she looked better. "I still can't believe you did that," she murmured, giving him a look that was almost shy. "I've never heard anyone talk to Edmund Monterey like that." "Believe it," Evan said with a shrug. "He's a petty bully, and he's gone now. You needn't ever worry about him again." Anna's gaze turned wry. "Now, I just have to worry about you." Evan grinned at the girl who was watching him with a certain amount of wariness, but underneath it, he wondered if he could sense a fascination as well. "What's to worry about?" he inquired. "I've been told that I dress too conservatively, and sometimes I like to make an impression. I liked what you were saying in there. You have free rein and a decent budget to dress me, and you'll be paid well for your work." "Well, I suppose we should talk about your taste then," Anna began. "Like I said before, Italian would be a stunning choice on you." Evan waved away her questions. "I trust you. I don't need to be bothered with the details if I leave it all in your hands, do I?" She looked startled. "I suppose not." "Good. Clothing only appeals to me insofar as how it looks on me once purchased and how others react to it. I'm far more interested in talking about you." "Me?" Anna's voice came out a startled squeak, and he laughed. "Relax, sweetheart. I'm not going to bite unless you ask very nicely." He smiled inwardly at the blush that colored her cheeks. "Well, you're from my side of the pond, aren't you?" "Oh yes, I'm American. From Chicago originally, and then L.A." As she talked, Evan listened, and soon the picture of Anna became clear. She was sweet, bright, young, and aching for a chance at her dreams. He understood, and he felt a touch of genuine affection for the girl. Underneath the affection was the whisper of something deeper, something inside him that he hadn't been aware of before, but he pushed it aside. He was too old for that kind of thing, but as he watched Anna's elegant hands move as she talked, as he saw the spark of warmth in her beautiful eyes, he reminded himself that there were certainly plenty of other things that he wasn't too old for.
Chapter 4. Anna.
Anna could barely believe that things were happening so fast. 2 weeks ago, she had been toiling night and day for the barest glimmer of her dream in London. Now she was in Manhattan, waiting for the real test run of her new job. Evan had gotten her in touch with human resources to finalize her hire, had given her a company credit card to start refurbishing his wardrobe, and that had been that. Well, mostly that. Throughout those 2 weeks, Mr. Sheffield had slowly been ratcheting up the physical tension between them. There was no denying how much she wanted him, nor did she miss the way his gaze lingered longer each time they saw one another. In between those meetings there were the texts, going initially from businesslike to slowly more and more flirtatious, and then the gifts. One day there would be a beautiful rose. Another, a tube of the exact right shade of rich, luxurious lipstick. Still another, a gift card for a massage. Each day, the message was more and more clear. And it was crazy. But as fast as it was all happening, Anna couldn't find it in herself to ask him to slow things. On the rare occasion that she did see him, Anna was disturbingly aware of his presence. She had thought him an extremely handsome man when he first walked into Monterey's, but there was more to it than that. She had dressed many handsome men, but Evan Sheffield was more than handsome. There was something about his smile, his charm, that made her breath catch. Tuesday afternoon, he walked into the penthouse suite where she was waiting for him, where he'd set her up to live and work for the next 6 months at least. She had dressed for the occasion, a tailor dressing him for a late afternoon event, in sleek black slacks, heels, and a demure blouse with a collar that tied with a bow at the throat. Her employer, on the other hand, appeared in jeans and a white long-sleeved shirt, casual and with the smell of sunlight in his dark hair. He gave her a slight grin as he entered the room, one that visibly melted Anna on the spot. "I look that bad, huh?" "Oh no, Mr. Sheffield, not at all." He didn't. She couldn't stop herself from glancing at the smooth play of muscles over his forearms, how dark the skin was compared to the crisp white of his shirt. "You're not a very good liar, darling. And don't call me Mr. Sheffield. If you're going to be getting me down to my drawers, you might as well call me Evan." Evan, Anna mused, and she was only aware that she had said it out loud when her employer chuckled. "Well, if you say it like that, I might never make it to tonight's benefit at all." She blushed when she realized what he meant, and he crossed the room to her. In the back part of her mind, she thought that she should be a little more alarmed by being in such close proximity with this man, but instead, all she could feel was a flutter of excitement. "You should push me away if you don't like the things I say," he murmured. She couldn't take her eyes off of his lips. "I like the things you say just fine," Anna replied, and he grinned, this time sharp and nearly feral. "You're wearing the lipstick. Allow me one moment." That was all the warning she had before his mouth found hers, his hand gently resting at the back of her neck as if he couldn't let her go. The first touch of his lips sent a spark racing through her, and Anna realized she had never felt such a rush from a simple kiss before. Without thinking, she leaned into him, wanting to hold on to the connection as long as possible. Evan's kiss deepened, warm and certain, and Anna's hands found their way to his shoulders, steadying herself. There was a quiet intensity in the way he kissed her, as though every second mattered. Something in her seemed to melt, and for a moment all her usual caution slipped away. Her thoughts tangled. He was her boss, and she knew getting closer could change everything. But before she could overthink it, Evan stepped back with a sigh, leaving her knees weak. "You are impossibly tempting," he murmured, his gaze lingering on her as if reluctant to leave. "If I had any sense at all, I'd skip that benefit and stay here with you. But there are board members I need to speak with. I might own the company, but I still need their approval before I move forward. Believe me, Anna, we'll continue this conversation the first chance we get." She blushed to the roots of her hair at his insinuating tone. Anna had the idea that she should be running for the hills, but instead, all she could do was feel impatient at the fact he had to leave at all. "Now, I believe you had some clothes for me." He switched into business mode effortlessly, yet another thing that fascinated her about him. "Oh, yes, of course." She turned to the closet, where she had carefully hung the outfit she had picked out for him. Evan raised an eyebrow when he saw the blues. His preferred colors tended to be far darker. "I chose blue because it's not too severe for daytime wear," Anna explained, "and the fabric is the newest thing coming out of France at the moment. You see, there's silk shot through with nylon, giving it a bit of gleam, a bit of durability, while retaining the classic hang." "I see." He nodded after a moment, leaving Anna weak-kneed again, this time because he was trusting her with his appearance, something no businessman did lightly. "And the shirt?" "Well, turquoise is very in right now, without being too far out as to seem trendy. The turquoise complements the blue of the suit, and the silver cufflinks add just a touch of kohl to the outfit and gives it distinction." Evan studied the outfit she had presented, and then smiled. "All right. You know what you are doing." She smiled with relief, feeling a tension within her that she hadn't been aware of relax. "Well, shoes are here and—" "Aren't you going to dress me?" he interrupted. She blinked at him, and the grin on his face was frankly challenging. "Sir?" "Gosh, I shouldn't like it when you call me that," Evan groaned, "but I do. You can leave if you want, of course. But I thought you might like to stay and see what your work has come out to." Anna felt her stomach do a slow turn, and suddenly what she felt was not a pride in her work, but a kind of hunger. It wasn't to see silk and cotton draped perfectly off of the wearer, but instead, she wanted to see Evan, bare, and to run her hands all over his frame. "Yes," she said in a voice that hardly seemed like hers. "I would like that." She followed him into the bedroom, where he stripped off his casual clothes with a kind of easy grace that made her blush. Anna hovered near the door, barely able to keep her hands to herself as his jacket, tie, and shirt hit the floor, followed by his slacks. Underneath it all, Evan's body was lean and strong, and she couldn't keep her eyes off of the light trail of hair that ran from his chest down into the waistband of his boxers. Matter-of-factly, he pulled on the trousers she had picked out, but then he turned to her after shrugging on the turquoise shirt. "Show me how this is meant to fit." There was something wonderfully imperious about his words that drew Anna in immediately. She crossed the room towards him, and when she smoothed the fabric over his shoulders and around behind his neck, she felt an electric thrill run down her spine. There was something sensuous about touching his body, with only a thin layer of cloth between them. She started to button the shirt, remarking absently in her mind on the way the fabric stretched beautifully over his wide shoulders. As she carefully slid each button into its place, her fingers brushed against his skin. She concentrated on her task, not looking up even when she heard his breathing speed up a little. Almost startled at her own boldness, she tucked the shirt into his trousers before doing up the fly and then the belt. "You're good at that," he noted, and she blushed. "Well, you know. Dummies and dress forms. I was teasing you." He ran a gentle finger down the curve of her cheek as she fastened the gleaming cufflinks. For one fleeting moment, she imagined turning her head to press a soft kiss to his hand, holding it there just a little longer than necessary. She had a job to do, though, and it was turning into a matter of pride that she do it well. Anna shook herself and pulled away, reaching for the jacket that had been what she considered to be the star of the ensemble. As she held it up for Evan to thread his arms through it, his phone rang. She stepped back, intending to leave the room, but he gestured for her to continue. "Jones, I thought it might be you." "No, the bid is solid. Make sure that MacArthur understands that. 12 million is what we're willing to commit for that parcel of land, and we are not going to go higher." Anna gasped as, with his phone in one hand, Evan reached out and rested his hand lightly against her side. There was nothing hurried about it, only a quiet certainty in the way he held her attention, even while speaking into the phone. His gaze was steady, as if he could focus on two things at once, the conversation in his ear and the woman in front of him. She buttoned his jacket with unsteady fingers, but didn't move away. Something about the moment, the nearness, the way his presence seemed to fill the space, made her feel claimed in a way she couldn't explain. "As a matter of fact, I'm not sure we can. The Hillanger Group probably can't muster the fees, and even if they could, they may think we'll outbid them. But yes, make sure that goes through. I'm counting on you." He ended the call and slipped the phone into his pocket. A small knowing smile touched his lips as he stepped closer, gently guiding her back toward the door. "I've been wanting to do this," he said softly. "That lipstick held up beautifully the first time. Let's see how it does now." He leaned in, capturing her lips in a kiss that carried an undercurrent of unspoken intensity. It contrasted with the elegance she radiated, making him seem all the more composed and in control. Anna let herself sink into the moment, the rest of the world fading, leaning closer in silent hope it would last. Too soon, far too soon, he drew back, his hand lingering gently against her cheek, his eyes warm with something like regret. "I think you deserve more than a hurried moment," he murmured. Anna opened her mouth to respond, the words caught in her throat. "I don't. This can wait, and it'll make this damn benefit I have to attend a little more entertaining, to know I have something good waiting for me afterward." "Something good?" Anna echoed, staring wide-eyed at him. "You," he said, and the hungry look he gave her left absolutely no room for confusion about what he meant. Evan pulled out his wallet and handed her a black credit card. Anna blinked. "I'm taking you out tonight. I want you to get yourself something to wear. Dress yourself like you would dress a client, from the skin out. But don't argue with me. I want to be seen with the best, and that means you use your best judgment. Do you understand?" "Yes." Anna's single soft exhalation made Evan smile, and he kissed her again. It was lighter, but full of promise. "Enjoy yourself today, Anna. I'll see you tonight."
Chapter 5. Evan.
Evan felt a sense of rising anticipation as he rode the elevator up to his Manhattan penthouse. He had received confirmation from Anna during the benefit that she was doing as he asked, and that only made waiting to return home to her even more difficult. He wasn't sure when he had enjoyed spending time with a woman more. He remembered the plain little outfit she had worn that morning, and even in that he had been eager to touch her, to kiss her. Seeing the bold red lipstick on her soft, lush lips had driven him nearly wild. The idea of her being dressed even more provocatively awakened an even deeper hunger within him. He opened the door and found the penthouse lit with a soft light for evening. He didn't see her at first, entering the living room and closing the door behind him. Anna. Oh, you're back. She appeared in the doorway, and Evan felt his breath catch. Too much? She asked nervously, and he shook his head. No, I would say that that's just enough. He had received plenty of compliments on his own suit that afternoon, but he knew that if he had had Anna by his side, no one would have noticed him at all. Anna was dressed in a long, dark blue dress, adorned with a delicate shimmer of crystal beads. A slit that traveled up to her knee revealed a tantalizing hint of leg. Her hair was pulled back from her delicate face, and she peeked up at him through her thick and surprisingly dark eyelashes. Too much? She asked again anxiously, and he shook his head. Never. You should have bought yourself jewelry. She opened her mouth to protest, but Evan shrugged. Next time. Come on, let me take you out. The fun of being out with Anna, Evan decided several hours later, was that she made everything seem new. She might have dressed the wealthy, but she certainly hadn't lived in their world. There was a real delight in taking her to one of the most exclusive restaurants in Manhattan, where the waiters knew him by name, and where she was treated like a princess. Part of his enjoyment was that she seemed so genuinely surprised whenever he offered her a new treat, some new pleasure she had never imagined before, whether it was caviar or a small ice cream sundae dusted with gold. After dinner, they ended up at a club owned by one of Evan's friends. The dance floor was uncomfortably crowded, so even though Evan had been entertaining fantasies of taking her in his arms for a slow dance, they settled into a booth with cocktails in front of them. So, how are you liking the high life so far? He asked, reaching across the table to capture her hand. Anna laughed in disbelief, looking around her. Her fingers automatically wrapped around his, and he liked that a whole lot. Honestly, I'm wondering how you people manage to get up for work in the morning. You've already worked all day, and been to a benefit, and gone out on the town with me. I already feel like I could tumble into bed, and yet, I'm sure most of these people here are going to be going until dawn. Evan smiled. Well, most of them don't have to work in the morning. But you do, don't you? I'm afraid I do. Why? The question made Evan look at Anna curiously. Because I'm rich, and I like to stay that way. So, when do you enjoy yourself? Anna wondered, and Evan grinned. Believe me, I find the time. I'm enjoying myself right now. He was going to lean across for a kiss. Damn whoever might be watching when he saw a familiar face in the crowd. Jones spotted him at the same time, and came over to the booth, a grin on his face. Out enjoying the town a little, old man. Doing better than you are, Jones, said Evan unoffended. I take it you cleared things up with MacArthur? Yeah, I did, Jones said. Hey, chickie. Take a walk, yeah? I want to have some words with the man. Evan scowled, and his previously good mood evaporated as Anna blushed and started to her feet. Right. I'll just take myself off for a bit, yes. No, you're going to stay right where you are, Evan growled, squeezing her hand hard before letting it go. He was glad that his words seemed to cut through her embarrassment enough to keep her in her seat. Jones looked at Anna in irritation. You can go find another one in a bit, Evan. I just need you for a moment. No, you listen to me, Evan said with a cold anger that surprised even him. You do not come up to me and speak to a woman like that. If you do it again, I swear to God I will kick you to the curb. There is absolutely no excuse for that kind of rudeness. Jones stared at him, his jaw dropping. You can't mean it. I'm dead serious. Straighten out or find a new job, Jones, and I'll go to that fiber exhibit opening that Anna wants to go to without a single thought for you at all. Jones gave them both a level, venomous look, but then he shrugged as if it was no matter to him at all. All right then. Don't mind me. I guess I've had a few too many, right? I'll catch up with you in the office. Yeah, go sleep it off, Evan growled, only partially appeased as Jones slouched away. Then he turned back to Anna. I'm sorry about that. He's my business partner, not my friend. I don't know much about he interacts with women outside the office. It felt like a lame excuse even to him. Anna shook her head, but he could tell that there was something troubling her. A lot of men are like that, she said, looking down. Especially when you get to the circles that you run in. They really do see a lot of women as accessories, disposable toys they can throw away because there will always be another one. I'm not like that, Evan said firmly, and she smiled at him. He could still see the edges of fear around her expression, and he felt another surge of irritation at his business partner. I know you're not, Anna said softly, and she leaned across to plant a gentle kiss on his cheek. For some reason, that simple and sweet gesture touched him in a way that their kisses from before simply hadn't. Thank you for standing up for me. Don't thank me for being a decent human being, Evan said. But I will say that my taste for being out and about has gone. Will you come back home with me? She leaned back for a moment, looking at him, and Evan wondered what it was she saw in the dim light of the club. Whatever it was, though, she smiled and nodded. Yes. I want to go home with you.
Chapter 6. Anna.
Anna knew exactly what was going to happen as they rode the elevator up to the penthouse, the tension between them growing thicker by the minute. And she wanted it. She'd wanted it since the moment Evan walked into Monterey's. She wanted it more than ever now, after spending an incredible evening in his company, culminating with him dispatching his boorish partner. Evan was the complete package: brains, manners, kindness, and looks. Gosh. His looks. When I get you in those doors, you are going to be mine, Evan murmured, leaning in and cutting into Anna's thoughts. You can say no, you can leave if you want, but otherwise, you are going to belong to me. Evan, she whispered, unable to tear her eyes from his gaze. As I said. You can leave if you want. Otherwise, though, I am going to take you. I'm going to make you feel everything I've been thinking about all damn day. All damn month. You should know what it means if you stay with me tonight, Anna. There was no part of her that wanted to run at all. Instead, all that mattered was getting closer to him, exploring the hunger that he had woken in her. I am not going anywhere, she said, and the look he gave her was pure victory. When he locked the door behind them, there was something final about it. There was no going back, and if Anna were honest with herself, she didn't even want to. What she wanted was Evan, and when he swept her up in his arms, she whimpered because all she wanted was more. Gosh, you look so damn beautiful tonight, he growled, sweeping her up in his arms and carrying her through his huge apartment to the bedroom before Anna even had a chance to look around. Do you know what I want to do to you? No. She twined her arms around his neck and smiled. But maybe you'll show me? He grinned at her response and playfully guided her toward the bed. Anna felt slightly disheveled, her hair tumbling loose, her skirt a little wrinkled, but she couldn't deny the thrill of the moment. One day I might sweep you off your feet entirely, he teased with a sparkle in his eye, but tonight I'll try to behave. She laughed, caught between embarrassment and delight, sensing the undercurrent of affection in his words. Come here, he said more softly, drawing her close. His tone carried a quiet authority, but instead of feeling overpowered, Anna felt safe, seen in a way she hadn't in years. You're beautiful, he murmured, his gaze warm and steady as it traced her face. Anna's breath caught, and for a moment the world around them seemed to fade. She felt an almost overwhelming awareness of him, his nearness, his steady presence, the way his attention wrapped around her completely. The air between them grew still, and when he reached for her hand, she let him draw her closer, her heart pounding. He brushed a stray lock of hair from her cheek, his touch lingering just long enough to make her skin tingle. "You did this for me," he said quietly, his voice full of wonder. She could only nod, unsure her voice would work at all. Then with a soft smile, he pulled her into a kiss. It was unhurried and deep, a mingling of breath and unspoken promises. Anna melted into it, feeling the rush of emotion sweep through her. When they finally parted, his forehead rested gently against hers. "You're extraordinary," he whispered. In that moment, Anna knew she wasn't just caught in attraction, she was standing at the edge of something far more profound.
End of sneak peek for The Boss's Claim, an age gap romance. Please like and subscribe to support this channel, it helps more than you know.